What would actually happen if everyone in the United States just stopped paying taxes? Not a few people. Not a protest group. Everyone. No income taxes. No business taxes. No one files. No one pays. At first, it sounds simple. People keep more of their money. But once you look a little closer, you realize this isn't just about money. It's about what holds the entire system together. In this video, we're going to break down what would realistically happen if taxes stopped overnight. Not just the obvious answers, but step by step. What happens when individuals stop paying? What happens when businesses get involved? How the government responds? And what this would actually feel like for everyday people. But before we go further, we need to define something clearly. Taxes are not just a bill you pay once a year. They are the primary funding source for how a country operates. In the US, taxes fund things like Social Security and Medicare, public schools and education systems, roads, bridges, and transportation, law enforcement, courts, and emergency services, national defense, public health systems, unemployment and food assistance programs. So when people ask, what if we stop paying taxes? What they're really asking is, what happens if we remove the financial backbone of the system? This question is becoming more common for a reason. A lot of people feel frustrated with how tax money is used. You'll hear things like, why am I paying so much but not seeing the benefit? Why does so much money go overseas or into military spending? Why does the system feel unfair depending on income? And some of this frustration is understandable. For example, a large share of taxes comes from everyday workers, while some corporations and wealthy individuals use loopholes to pay far less than people expect, which creates tension around who is actually funding the system. So naturally, people start thinking, what if we just stop participating? Let's break this down realistically, and not just theoretically. Point 1. Most people can't really stop paying taxes. The first thing people overlook is control. For most workers, taxes are automatically withheld from paychecks. Sales taxes are built into purchases, and fuel taxes are included in gas prices. So even if you wanted to stop paying taxes, you don't fully control that process. You would need employers to stop withholding, businesses to stop collecting, systems to be deliberately shut off, which already makes large-scale coordination extremely difficult. Point 2. What if individuals try anyway? Let's say people try anyway. Employees file exempt. Self-employed individuals don't pay, and people stop filing returns. At that point, this becomes tax evasion, and the system is built to respond to that. What typically happens is not mass punishment. It's targeted enforcement. Penalties and interest begin accumulating, wages can be garnished, bank accounts can be frozen or levied, and property can be seized. And in more serious cases, there can be criminal charges. The key detail here, the government does not need to go after everyone. It only needs to make visible examples that push most people back into compliance. Point 3. What if everyone actually coordinates? Now let's take the unrealistic and assume it becomes real. Everyone stops. Employees, self-employed, and business owners. Now the situation changes completely. Because this is no longer about enforcement. It becomes a revenue crisis. Point 4. The government doesn't collapse immediately. One common misconception is that everything would instantly fall apart. That's not how systems like this work. The government still has tools, existing funds, borrowing through issuing bonds, and short-term financial adjustments. So in the beginning, things might look surprisingly normal, but under the surface a gap starts forming. Less money coming in, the same obligations going out, and that gap grows quickly. Here's the part most people don't think about. The system's first response is not collapse. It's correction and enforcement at scale. If revenue drops significantly, the government escalates. And one of the first places it applies pressure is not individuals. It's businesses. Because businesses are where taxes are actually collected. And when businesses get involved, businesses stop handling things like payroll tax withholding, income tax reporting, and sales tax collection. If they stop participating, the system loses its primary collection mechanism. At that point, enforcement becomes much more aggressive. You would likely see large corporations targeted first. Executives held legally accountable and financial penalties and asset seizures, because it's more effective to pressure a few large entities than millions of individuals. And realistically, most businesses would not risk shutdown, legal exposure, or prison for executives. So even in a movement, businesses are the most likely to break first. Now let's go one step further. If enforcement doesn't restore tax revenue, the government has limited options left. At that point, it may rely heavily on borrowing and creating more money to support the economy. And this is where economic consequences begin to show up fast. If too much money is created to cover the gap, inflation increases, purchasing power drops, and savings lose value. At the same time, government workers may not get paid consistently. Services begin to slow down or shut down, and infrastructure maintenance declines. And this starts affecting everyday life. Now let's talk about what this actually feels like. From the outside, it might seem like, you keep your money, that's a win. But in reality, the trade-offs become visible quickly. And this is where it becomes personal. This isn't just about government funding, it directly affects your job stability, cost of living, and access to basic services. So even if you keep more money up front, the environment around you becomes less predictable and more fragile. You could see reduced school funding and staff cuts, strained healthcare systems, slower emergency response times, and deterioration in public infrastructure. For many people, benefits and assistance programs disappear, job stability decreases, and businesses scale back or close. At the same time, inequality often increases, because people with resources can adapt to the hard times, while people without them feel the impact immediately. So what you should actually take from this is most people can't realistically opt out of taxes, even if they want to. The system relies on participation, not just enforcement. Large-scale refusal doesn't create freedom, it creates instability. And without a replacement system, removing taxes creates more problems than it solves. Now let's zoom out even further. The US economy is deeply connected to the global system. If tax revenue collapses, investor confidence in government debt weakens. Bond markets react, and the US dollar can lose strength. And because the dollar plays a central role globally, this doesn't stay local. It can affect global trade and financial stability. So when you step back, the system works like this. Taxes fund government operations. Those operations support economic stability, and that stability supports everyday life. Government stability supports the economy. The economy supports jobs, income, and infrastructure. Once you remove the funding, the system doesn't just shrink, it starts to break under its own weight. Remove taxes, and you don't just remove a payment. You destabilize the structure that everything else depends on. At the end of the day, the idea of what if we all stop paying taxes sounds like freedom on the surface. But in reality, it's closer to removing the foundation of a system without replacing it. And the real question isn't, what happens if we stop paying? It's what replaces it. And would it actually be better? Thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what financial topic you'd like broken down next. I'll see you in the next video.